بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر صدق الله العظيم. Respected brothers in Islam, respected sisters who are listening, being in the field of technology and being in the field of deen at the same time gives one very, very unique perspectives on what's going on in the world. It gives you a unique perspective on how to deal with new and emerging unexpected trends, like the trend of artificial intelligence, for example. And it also gives you a systematic approach to deal with this, to deal with these things that come up. And I'll give you an example, and this is why I don't believe in long talks. I spoke at a conference on Monday about artificial intelligence in the tourism and in the conferencing industry, and I was given 30 minutes. I took 20 minutes, and by the time I was done, the minister who was present, he said, that is the most concise yet most detailed description I've ever heard about AI and how it fits into our world. That was the easy part. But when you look at something as complex as the Ummah of Rasulullah, the current Muslim Ummah, it is a lot more complex than any industry that we know. The community is much bigger, and it takes a lot of thought to try and figure out what is going on, how this is all going to affect what is going to be the future of the Ummah. And ultimately, I can tell you with 100% confidence, no one really knows. But it's not something that we should be concerned about, because across every industry people are grappling with this. With algorithms now that can think for themselves, that can correct themselves, that can learn and can give unexpected results, people are wondering exactly how are different industries going to be affected. And people are making all sorts of predictions and assumptions. Some of it will come true, most of it will not come true. So let's start with the concept of artificial intelligence, right? I mean, I can see I'm assuming there are a lot of professionals here, so I won't delve too deep into the algorithms and things like that. But artificial intelligence comes from traditional algorithms. It's the next stage in computer algorithms. Now in the traditional computer algorithms were very simple in the sense that what you told them to do, they did. You said, step 1, do this, step 2, do that, step 3, do that, and it was done. But AI algorithms are different in a sense that they are able to learn, they are able to improve themselves, and they are able to produce results that we didn't expect. And they are able to look at vast amounts of data, a vast amount of nebulous data, and extract from it patterns that we never couldn't see as human beings. Now, the whole idea of algorithms came from a very, very long time ago. I think they've been around since, about 1,000 years. And the idea of algorithms was laid down by Muhammad ibn Musa al-Kharizmi, an alim, a Muslim scientist. And the reason he did this was to assist people with calculations, right? And I want you to center around the reasoning here, because this is very important. This is almost the crux of what I want to tell you today. The reason was to improve lives. Now, in those days, when people needed to calculate things like inheritance masail, you know, the inheritance masail in Islam are fairly complex with fractions and things. And then you've got other types of calculations. For example, in business, people are doing all sorts of calculations, right? How much of fabric you will need and how much of carpet you will need to carpet an area. So there were lots of errors in those calculations, and this was leading to problems in society. So Al-Khwarizmi decided, let me solve this problem by coming up with these formulas that would be easy, would enable people to calculate things much easily. Man dies, leaves 2 sons, 1 daughter, has so much of wealth, and this is the formula that you follow. And through that process of trying to solve a major problem for the Ummah, trying to make the Ummah a better place, trying to make the world a better place, he laid the foundations without even knowing for modern computer science. So today every single computer in the world, whether it's the computer in your phone or in the most powerful AI or in the autopilot of the plane that you're sitting on, all of these run on algorithms, or even the computer in your microwave oven, these are all running on algorithms. And none of this would have been possible without Muhammad ibn Musa al-Khwarizmi. But it's very important to understand that. Now, when you look at AI as it stands currently in the world, like I said, every industry is grappling, every industry is trying to figure out, it's trying to stay ahead of the curve, but that curve is just moving further away. It's just very, very fast. The change is frantic. The change is scary. And I said this many years ago, I think 5 or 6 years ago, I was on a lecture tour in Joburg, and I said, in the 2020s, we're going to see more tech advancement than we saw in the previous 100 years. And that 100 years was the 20th century with everything that we know that was invented. And what's the reason for this rapid change? It's artificial intelligence. Whereas we were responsible for the changes and for the innovations that took place in the previous century, now we have company, and that company is artificial intelligence, which is going to be assisting us with innovation. And now AI is basically innovating in pretty much every field you can imagine, from computer chips to clothing to shoes to new kinds of materials for planes and spaceships and things like that. So it's actually very, very, very fascinating, but also very scary. It is scary. Now, coming to my point now about the impact of AI on the Ummah. And this is where I think we need a little bit of a paradigm shift. We need to shift our thinking to asking a different type of question. Rather than asking, how will AI impact the Ummah? I think we should think more like Al-Khwarizmi and ask another question, how will the Ummah steer AI? That seems more like a question based on a proactive strategy rather than a reactive victim type of strategy. Now we know the seat of learning and seat of technology is in the West, but the trouble with anything that comes from the West is that it's biased towards their philosophy and their mindset, which is fine. They're the creators of it. Now, what about an AI that is biased to our philosophy, something that we create that is for us, that we use to make the world a better place? Now, how do we do that? Now, when we look at AI, the first rule that I would say, and this is my opinion, right? It's not for everybody and it's not to raise any kind of controversy. It's just this, that the first thing we need to understand is, let's embrace it. Let's stop being in denial and embrace technology, embrace AI. Now, why I'm saying this is because there's still a lot of confusion about whether technology is good or bad and what are the pros and cons. I know there's pros and there's cons, but I'm saying let's embrace, because when we embrace it, then we start to realize that this thing is a powerful thing in our hands, power to do good or power to do bad, power to build us up or power to destroy us. When we realize that, then we start thinking now more proactively, how do I deal with this? But as long as you are in denial about it, you're not going to think proactively. So first things first, let's embrace it, right? Then when you look at artificial intelligence, we look at it on two levels, on a personal level as Muslims, and on a community level as an Ummah. And this is the two perspectives. So we are always zooming in and out between these two perspectives. Now let's start with the personal level, right? On a personal level, how is this technology affecting us in our day-to-day lives? And not just us, but the generations to come afterwards. I know a lot of this is very scary. I know it's very daunting. Sometimes I personally, even though my life is in IT, I run an institute that teaches IT, but sometimes I feel like running for the hills with this rapid and frantic pace of technology. And maybe going to one madrasa in the mountains in Pakistan and going and refreshing my kitabs and live out my years there away from this tech. But then the question arises that isn't this an irresponsible thing for me to do? Because I've been given this gift of technology, and I've been given this gift of a little bit of understanding of matters pertaining to deen. If I'm going to head for the hills, what's going to happen to the generation after me and the generation after them and after them and after them? Aren't we leaving them out in the cold? So this is why I say embrace it, and let's put our heads together as to how we're going to make the most of this thing. So that's the first thing, right? So let's embrace it. Second, we look, each one of us, at the benefits of it and the harms of it. Remember, just like with everything in life, وَيَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الْخَمْرِ وَالْمَيْسِرِ, people ask Rasulullah about alcohol and gambling. Allah Ta'ala says, yes, there are benefits and there are harms. Right? So with AI, with technology, granted, we all know there are benefits and there are harms. I categorize them as good, bad, and just pure ugly, right? So there are the good things. For example, in our cell phones, we've got the biggest library ever known to mankind, right? Pull out your cell phone and start reading a book on any topic in the world, or watch a video on any topic, do a course on any topic. That's great. That's the good stuff. Your cell phone reminds you when it's salah time. Your cell phone is a quick refresher for your surahs, etc. Right? What about the bad? Right? The bad side of it, and this is more. It's a very ominous thing, right? When I speak to youngsters, and I speak to a lot of youngsters, because other than having my own institute, I do lecture at universities. I lecture at UKZN also. And when I speak to them, I do these informal surveys. Like, how much time do you spend on social media? And people are not afraid to say, I spend sometimes in a stretch 4-5 hours just watching short form videos on social media, on TikTok or Reels or Instagram Reels or whatever. So that is a cause for serious concern for a number of reasons, right? The one is the time that's going there. Imagine that time that you are spending thinking that you're doing something good. Maybe you're learning a couple of things, but there's no depth to that learning. There's not much you can learn from these short form videos. Imagine that time used in doing some ibadah or reading something or learning something. That time would be spent or spending time with your family, right? Quality time. So we need to be careful about that. Now, let me tell you about these algorithms. There's artificial intelligence, and some of the most intelligent artificial intelligence is in these apps like TikTok. And TikTok is the champion. The algorithms in TikTok are simply the best when it comes to being effective. And what is effective for them? Effective for them is to captivate and engage. And it does that. That's why people can spend hours and not realize the time is going. And how it does that is that we can watch TikTok for 5 minutes, and in that 5 minutes it knows who you are. It knows what you are all about, what your preferences are, because it just flashes videos in front of you and it monitors your reactions. It sees how long you watch a video for before you swipe. Do you watch the whole thing? Do you watch part of it? Do you swipe away quickly, etc.? And in that 5 minutes it knows you already. Now you have to train this algorithm. So it's one of two things going to happen here. This AI algorithm is either training you and keep sending the kind of information to you and showing you the kind of videos that it thinks you should see, or you could do something else. You could take ownership of it. You can train that algorithm by quickly switching out things that you don't find relevant, or you don't find that is in tune with our value systems. So this is not in tune, out, or even go to the extent of flagging it as this is not relevant to me, I don't like this type of content. So in that way, you are taking ownership, right? But then, my problem comes about with children, right? Children don't have that ability to discern what is right and what is wrong. They just fall prey to anything. That's why now you'll see a little child sitting and watching TikTok, and somehow it just knows. Don't even ask me how it knows. It just knows that there's somebody that's of a younger age that's watching this. It's maybe through the content. So it will show some kind of dance, and the little girl will do she'll watch it, she'll do the dance and switch and do the dance, and something else will come up. Now, it's a very dangerous thing for us as parents to leave kids alone with this kind of technology, because now it's starting to slowly indoctrinate those little minds, and the AI is training that mind. And the nature of this short form video is actually so strong. It's so addictive, right? I was reading somewhere, and you probably came across this, that Netflix's biggest competitor is not other streaming services, it's TikTok. Because people can't even focus now through a half-an-hour series. They can't. They need that 30-second or 3-minute video, and then they quickly swipe out. That 30 minutes to even watch a series is too much of an investment for them now. They can't stay still, so they need that short form. So the streaming services are struggling to pull people away from that. I'm not condoning anything, but I'm just saying that is the power of these short form videos. There's been studies done on it, and the psychology behind why these are so attractive, why they have such a strong pull. Now, what we need as parents, and I'm coming to the community aspects of it, but I just thought we build from the ground up, right, from grassroots level to up. We need to firstly take ownership of our own habits around a cell phone. Secondly, we need to become a part of our children's lives when it comes to technology. Technology is not a convenient way of keeping the little one busy while we are working. It's not. We need to be very careful about that, because it's not like the old days. When I talk old days, sometimes it sounds like 50 years ago, but I'm talking about like 3 or 4 years ago, when what you put on that cell phone for the child, she play that. Now you don't know what's coming, because AI algorithms, these things are learning. These things are learning what your habits are, what the child is looking for. It's showing her all of those kind of things. So we need to be very, very part of our children's growth in that. So that's the second thing, right? So the third thing is stop. So one is to embrace this technology, and the other is to stop looking at it as an enemy, but for once start looking at it as an ally, a potentially very big and powerful ally to spread the good word. Because if you are lamenting, complaining about all the batil and fitna and the incorrect things that are out there, so my question is, what are you doing about it? What are you doing to set the record straight on social media? What are you doing? What kind of content are you putting out, or encouraging others to put out? What kind of content, what kind of comments are you putting out to show people that that's wrong, this is the truth? I mean, it makes us happy, right? It makes us all happy when we see some very logical analysis of what is going on in Palestine. When we see somebody commenting on that, it makes us happy. We need to start promoting things like that. It makes us happy when we see, hey, this person from a European country was anti-Islam, very Islamophobic, and accepted Islam. So beautiful. It makes us happy. Start promoting content like that. And every one of us is responsible. Rasulullah said, "Ballighu anni walau ayah." Convey from something you learn from me, even if it's one ayat. So even if it's one ayat, you don't have to show your face on video or anything, but just somehow share something good for the day. You don't know who's going to benefit from that. You don't know that one video, what downstream effect is going to have, and what impact that's going to have on your life and on the community going forward. I'll tell you a story. I don't mean to digress, but this is an interesting story. I was at Bangalore airport, and my flight was delayed by about 45 minutes. So my wife and I, we went to sit in a coffee shop, and there was these tables with computers and everything for the guests to use. And while we're sitting there sipping our coffees, along came this big, bumbling Pandit guy with the orange robe and the bald head and the hair. You know how they have that long hair in the middle. And the poor chap goes and he buys a coffee, sits down, and trying to adjust himself, he whacks his coffee cup, and that thing goes flying across the keyboard, the mouse, the screen, everything. And the rest of the clientele in the coffee shop clearly were all Hindus. And they were looking at this guy with daggers, like, this guy is an idiot. So I told my wife, you know what, I'm feeling sorry for this guy. Let's go and help him. So we got a stack of tissues and started cleaning up his place, cleaning up his sleeves and everything, got him a cup of coffee, put it there, and settled him in. As I'm leaving the coffee shop, he follows me out. And he says, thank you so much. You are like my son. I said, Chala, the Maulvi became a Pandit's son. So the point behind that is one little act of kindness, right? And it affected this person so much. I don't know who this man is. I will probably never see him for the rest of my life. But I know that there's a seed planted in his head. A seed of kindness, a seed of goodness planted in his head. Because it's not a light thing for a Pandit to say to a person who is clearly a Muslim, you're like my son. So maybe someday I will see the results of it. So in the same way, the content that we put out beautiful, meaningful content. You heard a good bayan, take a snippet, put it out there. Somebody is going to benefit from that. You know, when I'll get to the other stuff. Last year, my marketing team suggested I go on TikTok. I said, no, this is for teenage girls, not for old guys. But then they insisted, and then I made one video. I made two videos, one on ChatGPT and one on business values. And immediately my account just shot up to 25,000. And up till today, I get messages from all over the world about people being grateful for the content I put out on entrepreneurship, on technology and business. So it gives me a lot of gratification when people say this. I met a youngster from London about a month ago, and he says, it's because of you I got a job. I says, but how? He says, I watched your one video on artificial intelligence in my industry. I forgot the industry. And I went and I delved into that. I learned that. I went deeper into that. I put it onto my CV. And on that basis alone, they gave me the job. I said, Alhamdulillah. We don't know what impact the little good that we do is going to have. So one is embrace it. Other is treat it like a friend, but also a potentially dangerous enemy. Right? But when we take control, then things become more clear. Right. So that's so much on a personal level, right? It all comes back down to controlling ourselves when it comes to social media and being part of our children's growth in that. It's difficult. It's difficult to prevent them from it, right? So give them certain amount of time. I don't want to go into the details and things like that, but certain amount of time to use. Okay, now let's go zoom out, right? And look at the community now, at the Ummah and the how it relates with AI. Firstly, let's talk about aqaid, right? This is something that worries me because I get asked this a lot on radio and TV and interviews. And the question is, will AI become alive? Will it become sentient, like in the science fiction? And the answer is, when people ask Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, see, the answers are all in the Quran. When people ask Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when they ask you about the ruh, see, sentience and intelligence, I'm talking about real intelligence, not artificial simulated intelligence. I'm talking about real intelligence that comes from being sentient, and that sentience comes from the ruh. And that ruh, Allah Ta'ala says, is from Allah Ta'ala Himself. So as much as the media would like you to believe, or the science fiction would like you to believe that there is an AI that has become sentient or is going to become sentient, this, and I'm very strong on this part here, this is against our core aqaid. Nothing can come alive without Allah Ta'ala's instruction. That's the basic aqidah. So let's be 100% clear about that. AI is incredibly capable and becoming more capable every day. But still, it's a simulation of our intelligence. It's not real, actual intelligence. It's not an intelligence that comes from being alive and being aware of the world around you and having a conscience and having emotions. It's none of that. It's a simulation, and a very, very good simulation. Okay, so Aqaid sorted. Fiqh. Let's talk about fiqh. I had a discussion with some muftis in Durban, young muftis, very, very proactive, brilliantly proactive. And the topic was around Mufti GPT, a generative AI that can give very accurate maslahs. Now, wouldn't that be a great thing? There are concerns. I'm not saying it's a perfect idea and a perfect solution, because just like with ChatGPT, there is margin for error. And when Mufti Sahibs are giving him a fatwa, there needs to be 110% accuracy in that, because the person's one wrong masla can create unnecessary problems. That we understand. But see, the inescapable fact is that I work in circles where people are not, they got this very passing relationship with religion. They're not bound to ulama like we are. They're not bound to a masjid. And in my assessment, that's the vast majority. Looking at the pyramid, they're the bottom of the pyramid. These people who are out there in the world, in Western countries especially, they are Muslims, but they're not very particularly strict as we would call ourselves. And so they are going to ChatGPT. And I'm talking about even in our community, young people. They're going to ChatGPT and getting information about the masail and things like this. And some of them are getting counseling advice also, which ChatGPT does quite nice. I asked it one day, my wife is upset at me, give me some advice. It gave some decent advice. But there's no way to verify that. There's no way for an ordinary person like you and I, unless you're trained in that particular field, to verify that. And it does make mistakes. And we all probably caught it. I caught it making a number of mistakes, and I corrected its mistakes. So that's it. But imagine if there is a Darul Ifta. I mean, there are already apps, there are websites like AskImam.com of late Hazrat Mufti Ibrahim Desai Sahib. Imagine taking that information now and crunching it with a generative AI, and now exposing a chatbot where people can ask these questions. Yes, there needs to be some kind of monitoring, and there needs to be a disclaimer to say that you're getting this masla. If it's something important that has serious consequences, please double verify this with a Mufti Sahib. Please double verify this with somebody who is learned in this space. I think it's necessary to tell people that. I mean, ChatGPT itself does that. So I think in the space of fiqh, there's incredible potential there. Now, somewhat related to that are other aspects like Islamic finance. I think one of the biggest challenges of Islamic finance, from our conversations last night, we were talking about Islamic finance, is portfolio management, right? You don't know, you're not sure whether to invest in a company or not, because you don't know upstream where's their income coming from. You want your halal earned rozi to be spent and invested in halal ways. Imagine if we could have an AI that is trained on Sharia compliance that could scan through the stock markets. And AI is already doing that. There's nothing new about that kind of AI that can scan through stock markets and create a map of companies and companies that own those companies, or companies that those companies invest in, etc., etc. And between all of that, design a fully Sharia compliant investment portfolio. How cool that would be. That would be amazing, right? So with 100% certainty that this is Sharia compliant. Okay, I'm going through these things very quickly, right? Because time. Halal, the halal industry. The halal industry is probably the most challenging. Tomorrow I'm speaking at Shanghai, and I would love to hear their thoughts on this. But when you combine AI with blockchain, let me tell you what, probably you guys are aware of this, what IBM and other companies are doing with supply chain management. In time, they will be able to trace every step of a product from source to table. So you got something on your table. Let's say you've got a bottle of spice there sitting. cayenne pepper, for example. You'll be able to scan that. There'll be a database and call up the entire blockchain of where this thing came from. The immutable blockchain, and you say, okay, all right, this thing came from there, from there, from there, from there, and you'll know the exact source, which farm. You know, I'm a bit of a coffee enthusiast, and coffee enthusiasts like to know where the coffee came from. So I could tell you that a certain coffee came from the Gololcha region in Ethiopia, because and it was roasted, it was grown on certain date, it was harvested on certain date, it was roasted on certain date. Now take all that information, put it into a super authentic blockchain, and that will transform the halal industry completely. So now you go to a shop and there's a SANA stamp on it, you scan that thing and say, no, I'm sorry, there's no SANA record for this thing at all on the blockchain, on SANA's blockchain. So that, and that obviously sort of combined with AI is going to make such a big difference. I mean, there's, I did some research recently for an interview, and I found that half of the food produced in the world goes to waste. So we're going to use AI in the future to sort of make sure that the food is going to the right places, or the right amount of food is produced and is going to where the demand is. So that's so much for the halal industry. Now let's talk about education. Education is the most challenging one for me, because I'm in the education space. I'm coming from Imamat. I used to be a Maktab Ustad, and then I was teaching in a Muslim school, and now I'm teaching in tertiary. And trust me when I tell you, and you've probably already seen this, with children preparing their assignments a day before using ChatGPT. I'm speaking at 2 educational conferences in September. One is the AMS conference, and other is the Kurtuba conference, and it's on the same topic, AI in education. Now let's talk about Islamic education first and foremost. And this again is my opinion. A couple of years ago, myself, under my supervision, a couple of my students, a couple of my graduates prepared a kitab, the Yasarna al-Quran kitab. They took it and they made an app of it. So what they got was, they got on Qari Sahib on Al-Falah College in Durban to read every single letter in that kitab, and they sort of embedded that into the app. And the idea behind the app is you touch the letter and it reads it to you in beautiful, clear Qari Sahib recitation. Now, take that to a next level, and this is the development of this next level is already happening. Imagine the app now listening to the child. So the app says Qala in Qari Sahib's voice, and now the child has to read back to it Qala, and it corrects the child if it's Qala, no, sorry, round mouth, from the throat, etc. Just like the Maulvi Sahib would do. Alhamdulillah, Al-Falah distributed that app, and we've got massively positive feedback from around the world. It's still doing the rounds. It's not the AI part where the child reads back. That part is still now under active development. But the first part, iteration 1 is done, where you press and then there are so many people who don't have access to a Maulvi Sahib. I'm not saying this is a substitute to a Maulvi Sahib. No, I mean, it's not going to happen. But it's an assistant to the Maulvi Sahib, and it's a blessing for those who don't have access to an alim. So you can read, you can learn to read by using the app. So when you look at the whole space of education, AI is just going to do some amazing things. But then you look at the legacy type of education, the factual recall type of education, that's almost dead now, right? Because AI just killed that. There's no such thing as now prepare one assignment and hand it in and the teacher expects. I think teachers, having spoken to teachers, they almost 99.9% expect that this is written by AI. So then my question is, what are you doing about it? How are you going to change this? And this is what I would do, and this is just a brief foresight into what I'll be speaking about in the conferences. I would say to my learners, I would say to them, I want you to go and do research on a topic. I don't know, Newton's laws of thermodynamics, for example, and I want you to present that to me, and I will ask you questions. Now there's no getting away from that. Unless the child got some ChatGPT embedded in her head, there's no way for her to escape. So, and I'll encourage them, go and use ChatGPT, and use Google, use every means, YouTube, whatever, but I want you to present it to me in the class the next day. Now we are teaching the child communication skills. We're teaching the child to take responsibility for our knowledge. We're making sure that she understands the concept well enough to explain it to another person, because you can't teach it to someone or explain it to someone else, you don't really understand the concept yourself. So there's accountability, and I would make it a little more fun. And again, a bit of it could be a bit controversial, but I would say to the child, why don't you prepare a 5-minute video, an infographic type video, describing this in your own voice. Now that's content creation, that's creativity, that's learning. It transforms education. It becomes so much more fun for the learner, rather than just copy and paste and put it in. So that is as far as education goes. Now these are just some of the fields, brothers. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. But I'm just trying to give you an overview. And more importantly, I'm trying to encourage you, young and old. Let's embrace this technology. Let's find solutions together. I'm only giving you certain ideas here. I don't have all the answers, but together, if we embrace this and we accept that this is the way forward, and most importantly, that we need to steer this thing in the direction that we want to steer it. Otherwise, 10 years down the line, we'll be like, oh man, we should have. There's no should have. The time is now. The time is now to start doing research, all in our own spaces. I mean, it's not everybody's job to be an alim, but somebody's an accountant, somebody's an engineer, somebody's an educator. Let's put our heads together and see how we can steer this AI in the best possible way and stop being in denial about it. With those 2 words, I'll conclude and open up for any questions. I took more time than I had initially intended to, but if there are any questions, I will be happy to answer them, inshallah. Okay, so I have a question, right? I have a question. What do you feel? How do you feel about artificial intelligence? Before this talk, after this talk, has there been any change? Looking for a volunteer here.
Yeah, do it. I think what you're saying is interesting. I mean, I think you can automate and you can have all those, what they call it, TikTok or apps that could project Islam in a different way, or project the questions, answers to questions. It could be a lot better for us.
A lot of the alims are using the AI technology in all these social media as well. Because the more times that you click on them, brings them up more frequently.
More views and
Do we not run the danger though? Like, I mean, in terms of the Sirah and how we taught from Hadith, the authenticity of Hadith by taking it from a scholar to the next scholar to the next scholar, do we not run the risk of losing that, of the thread of authenticity, when we start to do things like media content on these platforms? Because it leads itself to some kind of influence. So for example, where you might get a dissenting view on some aspects, depending on what view the author of the algorithm wish to pursue or debate. The danger is that you start moving more away from books of authentic hadith. Is that not a challenge?
I think it's a major challenge, and it's something that I lament, because there was a time when when schools, and I'm talking about the pre-modern era, when schools taught subjects like philosophy and epistemology, where people could take knowledge and evaluate it and be able to make a decision about the validity and authenticity of the knowledge, and make a decision about how they are going to act or not act on that knowledge. What you're saying actually is very important, because it underlines a much bigger problem, which is we are living in an information age, yet we don't know how to deal with all that information. We don't know how to evaluate it, and we're not taught that in school. And I think that needs to be taught. If there's ever a revamp of the curriculum, it needs to at least have the knowledge of how to deal with that knowledge, number one. So we have to test for authenticity. The second thing about the chain of narration, I think there's always, right till the day of Qiyamah, there's going to be a place for that. There are people who are going to hold that unbroken chain from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam till us or till Qiyamah. I mean, in Alim cause, I think 2 or 3 years of the Alim cause is about narrating hadiths from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in a chain from us through our ustad all the way to himself, to Imam Bukhari and to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So you can see there is that, and the Darul Ulooms are flourishing, and I think that's part of Allah Ta'ala's promise to protect the religion, to protect the kitab, to protect the hadith. So that will remain. As for dissenting information or worse still, deliberately misleading information, that's already out there. I mean, misinterpretations of Quran, deliberate, incorrect, wrong interpretations of Quran, or taking things that are systemically part of Islam and quoting them out of context. We're all familiar with that. We know that people are doing that and attacking Muslims about things that are not even true. So again, we need to stand up and correct all of these things. We need to and say and there are a lot of people doing that and say, oh, hold on, there's some nonsense there. Our religion doesn't teach us all that. So I think that would be that should be our approach. And I would love to teach children epistemology right from grade 1 upwards, so that they know how to deal with it. Just like with a chocolate bar, right? One alim was telling me that his children are so well trained that as young as they are, the moment they get something in their hand, first thing they'll run to mom, is this thing halal? Now look at that consciousness of eating halal. What about the consciousness of accepting information that's valid or not? I think we need to drum that into them from a young age. Be critical of that. It's critical thinking. In fact, I'm digressing. One of the key skills for the future, 6 key skills, is critical thinking. So for children to be able to evaluate information, it's critically important. Any other questions? Thanks for that, Roy. It's a very important question and very close to my heart because of all the misinformation out there.
If you look at the various methods and the way they interpret things, if you want to correct something, how do you do that? Because there may be different points of view on the same matter.
That would be actually quite interesting, because I could almost imagine the AI asking you what mazhab you are. For example, if you're asking masail of wudu, so it'll ask you what mazhab you are, and then it could give different points of view. And it would be so great to see our ulama unite on something like that. So we could say, according to Mufti Muhammad Dokrat, this is the masla. According to Mufti Yunus, this is the masla, etc., etc. So you know who you follow from there, and you pick what applies to you. I don't know if I'm answering your question. It has that capability, and we can build that in also, inshallah. We can train it in that way. Am I answering your question?
Yeah. It's just that I think sometimes we need a broader view, except, every mother's interpretation is correct.
Yes.
So how do we get that sort of thinking in our minds, because very often we always think of one mother to be the ultimate correct thing.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas there's multiple realities, multiple ways of seeing things, interpreting things.
Yeah, that's a very human thing, and one of our biggest problems these days is that intolerance for our own kind and our own colleagues and our own brothers and sisters. I don't think any amount of AI can ever fix that, unfortunately. They say AI, artificial intelligence, is no substitute for natural stupidity, so unfortunately.
Well, I think when you speak about the community, the example on blockchain and supply management, I think is an interesting concept, especially when it comes to halal, and looking at it. But on your mind, and maybe it's a bit of a tough one, but how do you see the authority on governing the algorithm input playing out in the future? Because that becomes interesting. So all of a sudden, from Nizam's point, start shifting away from trying to tested educational means, and you've got algorithm upon algorithm that's saying, I'm the authoritative source. I'll tell you what I think from my learnings is a halal supply chain that's now got a stamp of approval. But how do you see that playing out? In terms of who governs, who's the authority on algorithm? Well, that's the play.
Yeah.
How do you see that playing out?
So I think, and that's a question we were having, a discussion we were having last night at dinner with Uncle Muhammad and some friends. We see let's minus the world of technology and the world of AI. We currently have authorities that we all subscribe to, right? Somebody might subscribe to SANHA, and somebody to NIHT, and somebody to MJC. Although there's controversies around that, but we actually need to respect that, right? So I think that these institutions will at some stage need to take ownership of that AI and the algorithms that's governing it, right? And to ensure that it's always compliant to and it's look, the algorithms they don't change that frequently. They're actually very simple. I mean, for those that study AI, the algorithms are very simple. What makes the difference is the data points it's fed on. I mean, things like large language models and AI have been around from the 1950s, conceptually, theoretically. But what made it possible today is the internet and the vast amount of data that's been created. I mean, ChatGPT has been trained on 175 billion data points. And that's why it's so fascinating. There's no surprises, 175 billion. So, but the AI itself, yes, it's becoming more capable, but I think it's going to plateau and stabilize at some stage. But still, the authority behind, for example, the halal will need to take ownership of that algorithm. And if there is an update to the algorithm, they need to have the ability to evaluate whether this update is going to mess things up or if it's going to fix things. So there's always going to be this it's like a child, right? The child learns new things, and then the parent tests the child to see if it's learning something valid or if it's understanding all this correctly. So I think that's going to be key and critical for us to do. Now, with things like the blockchain assists in the sense that it has its own internal measures for authenticity. And I think ever since I started delving into blockchain, I'm not a big fan of crypto, right? I don't want to get into that masla there because that's another religious controversy. But the blockchain technology is incredible. And it reminds me almost of Imam Bukhari with his chain of narrators. Imagine the block as the hadith and the chain as the narrators, the block and the chain, the block and the chain. So I think in the halal industry, that's going to be important. Thirdly, so we got the algorithm, we got the blockchain. Thirdly, it's ultimately our responsibility as human beings. You don't just go and do a Google search and accept what you see there from any dodgy website because it's on the internet. We have to be, and it comes back to my previous point about education, we need to be careful about where we get our information from and be able to test the authenticity and the validity of the information. I don't know if I answered your question. It's a very complex matter. I can't say I got all the answers, but it's a start. It's somewhere, we can start somewhere, inshallah.
For like Sena and Uber, do you not create an LLM for them as well, for them to input data so that...
I didn't get it.
So you made a reference to the LLM model, large language model. Is there not an option for like Sena and all these other authorities to put data into some LLM model, which then gives you more accurate data?
So I don't think LLM is suitable for the halal industry because LLM is all about language. It's all about language comprehension and language dissemination. What they need is a very, very watertight ability to test the authenticity of somebody that claims that they are halal. So I think that would be more suited to something, in my opinion, to something like a blockchain. But when it comes to a Darul Ifta, for example, where there's tons and tons and tons of knowledge that's being processed and people asking questions, I think that would lend itself well to an LLM. I hope that, I mean, that's just my thinking on it.
Not all the data that's in the internet is valid. Although from an AI perspective, they can give you references of sources from which they pulled information, correct?
That's correct. I mean, the data, we have, sorry, you saying?
I said the data is user input. I mean, there's millions of people that are also feeding the system, the internet, with information. So it could be right information or wrong information that could be indoctrinated in the end into the comprehension of AI.
So I think it would be a reasonable assumption that just like as with a website, you can have a website that's completely open to user input and user contribution, like a wiki, versus a website that is purely for display purposes, displaying information. I think that there's going to be large language models that are locked down in a sense that it will only allow certain people with certain levels of authority, maybe in the Darul Iftar itself, to actually feed it with any sort of information. And what's great is that so many of our fatwa by the millions are now on the internet in massive database like Ask Imam, and so many of the legacy kitabs that come from our Darul Ulooms are now being digitized. Imagine all of that knowledge being put into a large language model. I mean, up till today, I don't know if you guys know better than me, but not long ago one of my nieces came and said they want some information about Hazrat Yunus alayhi salam. They needed to do a project. It was really hard to find that information on the interwebs. So I had to, go and find the references of him in the Quran and, pull that out from the tafsir and, compile everything from there. It's difficult to find authentic information like that, but if we have one authentic source where you can ask all that information to the level of detail that you require, that would be so amazing. It would be transformative, really, in my opinion.
What about the disruption on using AI of videos that with the voice recognition, and so it looks as if the Mufti is saying something, but it's actually not him.
Oh, the deepfakes! Oh, that is scary. Because, one of my team actually did that with my own voice. So he wrote some nonsensical script, and he used an AI, I forgot what it was called, and he uploaded clippings of my voice, and that thing read that nonsense in my own voice. And I was like, I didn't say this, but it was the AI did it. Now it's gone to video. They're creating deepfake videos. I think it comes back to again understanding how to evaluate the validity of information, right? It could have been an email or an article that had somebody's name incorrectly there. Now we have to understand that in the age we're living in, even video is not as authentic as it once used to be. So even that we need to take with a pinch of salt, and if we're going to be using it for anything valuable, we need to verify and validate that information, or at least make sure it's coming from a valid source. And I think that's what's great about social media and the internet. You can train that algorithm to only show you information from the sources that you want the information to come from, and that's to me that's very important. And there's something else. I want to mention very quickly. Controversial videos and controversial content, we need to be very careful about, because it's human nature when we hear something controversial, we want to go and seek it out. Now, when you seek out something on social media, what are you actually doing to it? You are promoting it. So we must be very careful not to, promote things like that, nonsensical, controversial things by going and seeking it out. You hear something, just best thing to do is to let it die a natural death by not seeking it out. You know what's been said, leave it at that. It's just a word of caution from my side, because I see that people are very fond of just throwing the cat among the pigeons just to get those views. Like there was one where this woman, you see this woman of full hijab, you say, mashallah, what's your name? And then suddenly she takes that whole thing out and she's dancing and says, I'm free now. You know, that sort of thing. They're only doing that for the view. There's cheap views. The best thing is swipe out, forget about it. Don't even tell anybody about it. Very dire, quiet death.
Close with the dua.
اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى ال سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم يا رب صل وسلم دائما ابدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم يا ولد الاولين ويا اخر الاخرين يا رحيم المساكين يا الله forgive us all our gunas and guide us into a Ya Allah, Ya Allah, we live in challenging times, Ya Allah, give us the strength, the knowledge, the fortitude, the wisdom to live through these times and protect ourselves and our children. And all these new challenges that are coming out, Ya Allah, give us the knowledge to use this for our advantage rather than let it be a detriment to us and protect the Ummah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Wa sallallahu ta'ala ala sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi.